Greetings, brothers and sisters. This is another Hollywood celebrities dropping like flies, sort of.
They're dropping like flies.
Listen, people are dropping like flies out there.
I am
Boop.
pissed off.
We're dropping like flies around here.
We're dropping like flies here.
Jeez, sir, 2 more just went down. Dropping like flies.
Too many people around here been dropping like flies already, and where's that getting us, huh? Nowhere. Fast.
Biden's being Biden's being an extremist.
Crush that fly.
Different kind of stuff today. Long narrative at the end, something that was going to get into the whole cord cutting thing. And it says U.S. officials have ordered a 2-day stand down for all military aviation inside as well as outside the United States after an F-35 jet went missing in South Carolina. The story keeps on getting more bizarre. According to ABC News, no units are allowed to fly unless there is discussion for 2 days about safe measures and procedures. No units are allowed to fly until they have 2-day discussion about, or I guess that's the quote there. They have all kinds of ways to track these planes. Well, let's just see it here. That's just one of them taking off. Here's a video from ABC News. I guess they're covering this pretty heavily. And this is the area, this is where the debris was. So, they know where it hit. So, like, how does it just disappear? Right? Like, there's down trees. It isn't like this went down the middle of the ocean. This is, in a place near a city, Charleston, and they're like, and this is just bizarre, right? And like just all the things that are happening anyway, but they're all around this area, and, they have all kinds of technology and tracking devices, and, they can locate things at the bottom of the ocean and, all these other things, and you lost a plane. I mean, just, what a bizarre thing. Berkey water filters goes on the offensives and sues EPA. Here's the lawsuit here. And the reason for this is it was this year to treat Berkey water filters. EPA's decision this year to treat Berkey water filters as though they are pesticides rather than water filters. Now, I've owned Berkey water filters for a number of years, and I like the water that comes out of them. It filters through, and I don't know if it's a specific filter or all their filters they're treating like pesticides. But what you do is you would pour like pond water or rainwater or something that is, filled with, bacteria, stuff you can't drink. And there are ceramic filters, like, ceramic, like your toilet's made out of ceramic, and, they are these filters. And then inside the filters, there's like charcoal and whatever. They show what's in there. And the water goes through the ceramic, and it comes out filtered of all these different things. I believe it gets rid of even fluorides and things like this. It's slow going. And there were times my family and I used the filter. Like we would turn off electricity and use it, and there's things that we used. Going camping, and for end time, if things break down. I mean, I own one of these things now. It is a way that you can process water, and everyone's going to need that. There's no city water, and I mean, most people don't have access to water. And so, it is a way to process and have good, clean drinking water. And, I don't see how it could be a pesticide. I mean, with all the poisons and toxins that they have out in the system, and something that is, among survivalists and preppers and, campers and, not both right-wing and left-wing people who go out, outdoors or being prepared, have these things. And then to make them, I guess you can't sell them in California, which would be a place where a lot of people would probably buy these. And these, I think, are more, I know that there are a lot of conservatives and preppers that use this, but I think there are a lot of liberals, and, it's more, I don't know. But either way, just bizarre. Like, it's just a bizarre story. Not bizarre, because they're doing stuff like this all the time. They call poisons, medicine, and they call things that are good for you poisons, right? Cindy Crawford calls out Oprah Winfrey for treating her like chattel by demanding she show off her body on camera at age 20 to prove she was worthy of fame. The young model was making her first appearance on the Oprah Winfrey Show. Cindy, 57, recalled, "I was like chattel or a child, be seen and not heard. Mom and Two opens up alongside fellow supermodels in upcoming documentary." So, like Oprah is someone else who got the good guy moniker, and that's starting to, be, looks very dudeish. Like, that looks kind of like a dude. Nestle's bottled water from California Spring for 100 years is illegal and must stop, regulators say. So Nestle taking water from some California, Nestle wanted to own water. They went out, that was part of their stated business plan. And they're going after the control of fresh water because, it's kind of important. So here's another one of those little aliens. There's another one of those little aliens they found in Mexico. So I showed you this with San Francisco. And this, the headline here was, "Sad to see so many businesses closing down in Los Angeles." Sunglasses Hut, Hooters, they got Hooters. Museum of Selfies, King, I don't know what that is, Bank of America, Sneakers LA, Wilcox Tattoo, Hollywood Pacific Theater, that's a big one there, Security Trust, like that's iconic, IO West, APL Restaurant, I don't know, Massage Envy, I mean, they're just OG Wings, Starbucks, the last Starbucks are closing down, the Pie Hole, Carlton Liquor, Healthy Spot, Pep Boys, they got Pep Boys, the Hollywood Hemp Museum. The majority of these things are happening in Hollywood. Like, I don't know, I'm not familiar with it, but this is happening in cities all over the country. All right, this is kind of great. One of my viewers sent me this.
Let's go. Here he comes, the comeback king. Here he comes. You want to come out?
Okay, so who is this comeback king? He's really trying to pump the audience up, and the audience, it sounds very small and very unenthused. They're not really into the comeback king coming out.
Here he comes, the comeback king.
Like they're trying to get everyone to say
Here he comes, the comeback king. Here he comes.
The audience isn't buying in.
The comeback king. Here he comes.
Okay,
The comeback king.
come on.
Here he comes.
Just bring him out.
The comeback king.
It's Corey J. Feldman wearing some sort of leopard suit or tiger stripes. Wait, something's amiss, Corey. What's happening?
I don't have to try coming to my mom.
I don't have to try coming to my mom. I don't have to try coming to my mom.
On the same count, everybody, really?
On the same count, everybody, really? You guys are you're robbing the comeback king of his big entry. The crowd is now so disappointed. What is he coming back from? Like, I mean, he was never there. Like, he's not, this isn't a comeback, right? You can't call it a comeback because he was never there. I mean, what is he, like, he's always sucked, right? Like, how about try not suck. Maybe he doesn't suck as bad. Like they should be chanting, maybe he won't suck as bad. That's what, make a song. I don't suck as bad as I used to. I'm getting better. My son was telling me about this yesterday. He's, he's likes Vivek. My wife, I said that I can pronounce Vivek, and my wife was calling me and saying she just heard the other day that it rhymes with cake, Vivek, and I'm like, oh yeah, it does. See, I just the way their names are spelled, and the different, they have different emphasis on different syllables, and so it's not a language that I'll ever, or even like I'm just talking about the English version of, the Indian English is not something I'll master, or any other languages. I'm not a linguist. But anyways, he was talking about liking this guy Vivek, because Vivek's going around and he's going to all these, he goes to a lot of young people's, right-wing young people's, YouTube pages and their social media accounts, social media interviews. He's interviewing with a lot of gun rights people and things like this. And so, he's doing what Kennedy was doing. They're the only two candidates that realize the news is utterly worthless. Mainstream media is dead. And the only way to gain any kind of following is to go on social media. And all the other candidates have social media accounts, but they're not using them. Trump has been doing it for a while, but, not, he's got his own, weird stuff now. His own, just, Trump-based, true social stuff. But here's this guy, right?
Go out and buy an automatic weapon. You can't go out and buy a cannon. And for those brave right-wing Americans who say it's all about keeping America's independent and safe, if you want to fight against the country, you need an F-15. You need something a little more than a gun.
Are you implying that F-15's are going to bomb American citizens? That's what he's saying here. He's saying if you go against the government, we're going to use F-15s against you. Like he's implying here, and he's basically out and out saying it, that you better have an F-15 if you're going to go against us. Like he's, like he's just so, this is a year ago.
No, I'm not joking. Think about this. Think about the rationale.
He's not joking about bombing American citizens with an F-15.
That's used to provide this. And who are they shooting at? Shooting at these guys behind me. Folks, look. I went to every major school shooting and around in the country since I was a chairman of the Judiciary Committee all the way through as vice president and president. Over 48,000 people died from gunshot wounds in 2021 in the United States of America. Over 26,000 by suicide.
That's a different problem, right? Like, if they're by suicide, then that's another whole issue to address, because if someone's intent on committing suicide, there's lots of different ways. And so, like, that's not, you can't say that's a gun issue. Just weird. Like, he's just, this was a year ago. Like, look at how bad he was back then.
When guns are the number one killer, listen to this now, the guns are the number one killer of children in America. Of children, number one.
What about cardiac arrest?
More children die from guns than active duty police and active duty military personnel combined.
All right, so that's Jojo Magoo. So here's something I read about. I think I mentioned it. 2 people died in India of Nipah virus in recent weeks, and the lethal disease, which kills up to 75% of those it infects. So this is,
Indian authorities are scrambling to contain an outbreak of the deadly Nipah virus after 2 people died of the disease in Kerala and at least 3 others tested positive. It's the state's 4th outbreak since 2018 and has left the region on edge, with schools and offices closed and a mass testing effort.
Okay, I don't think this is going to be a worldwide thing. Just because I get the sense, viruses in India are much different than the ones here. They survive in heat and humidity, right? Whereas like the viruses here are usually around when it's dry and it's cold. So anyways. Rockets Kevin Porter charged with felony assault, broke girlfriend's neck vertebrae, prosecutors say. He's been suspended from the team. He's had other issues. He was kicked off a Cleveland team for some of this other stuff. Some are similar, like criminal behavior. Now he's pretty much out of the NBA. Democratic Rep Jennifer Wexton not running again after diagnosis, no getting better. Representative Jennifer Wexton announced Monday she won't vie for a fourth term in the House of Representatives after being diagnosed with a rare neurological disorder. That she had been diagnosed with Parkinson's, but intended to keep serving Congress. That was announced in April, but now she suffers from something called subnuclear palsy. It's just another. There's so many dropping like flies here. Shannon Beater arrested for DWI hit and run after allegedly crashing into a house and fleeing. So many people running into houses. I mean, Anne Heche being the big one. But I think I recognize this as some actress, I think, or what is it? Anyways, that's a common behavior now. Wife of Patriots fan who died after being punched at a game, numb, demands answers. The widow of Dale Mooney, the 53-year-old father of two from New Hampshire who died Sunday after being punched while attending the Patriots-Dolphins game. Mooney died after he was described as a physical confrontation with a Dolphins fan in the fourth quarter. Wasn't this is a Patriots home game. The Dolphins fan walks over and clearly punches him in the face. You don't know who you're dealing with when you're talking boop, right? Biden administration tried to censor the Stanford doctor, but he won in court.
Blacklisted by Twitter for saying COVID almost exclusively threatened the elderly. And the 1.1 million Americans who died of COVID, their average age was 74. And you were blacklisted. And that's what we were. When we sit here, and this is why we're talking about it, that's why we sit here and say, we're talking and we refuse to let this happen again because we see where this is going. Okay, Fox News is Fox Business. Questions mount after U.S. fighter jet went missing for more than 24 hours after his pilot ejected safely. The Marine Corps lost track of the F-35B, which apparently is worth, I don't know where it is, $115 million, something like that. Maybe they have that somewhere else. So even the mainstream media is reporting this. It's suspicious. Sound of Freedom inspiration, Tim Ballard resigned from Child Rescue Group after misconduct reports. This shill. Okay, so this is a voiceover I'm doing first thing in the morning. I don't want to forget anything. I had a very profound spiritual experience last night, when I was meditating. And I'm going to put this in the end of my Apocalypse Now video today, because that's, its turn, and I want to get this out as soon as possible. But then also this will be a part of the Journey series, because it's important and it's a spiritual experience. So it's, for me, a very valuable voiceover. And so a few things. I best meditate at like 2 a.m, and it was 2 a.m. when this happened, for whatever reason. The middle of the night, especially when I first started doing Sajmark years ago, I would sleep for a little bit. I'd wake up between 2 and 4, and I would meditate, and it would have the best meditations. The way Sajmark is supposed to be done is that you wake up before dawn, and ideally you start meditating before dawn. And the reason was that Babaji, the second master of the system, said that it's best to meditate
at the longest point of when the sun goes down, because it's withdrawing heat from your body, right? The sun comes up, and when the sun comes up, you have your cycle of life. And when you go to sleep, when it's dark out, you have your cycle of death. That life and death are, in a person's sleeping hours, it's akin to death. It's when you're in your withdrawn state, your sleep state. And the waking hours are during the day. And so doing materialistic things during the day makes sense. And those of you who have worked third shift or have had weird sleeping hours know what I'm talking about. Like, I worked third shift for a while. And after a while, you start breaking down physically. You're not sleeping when you're supposed to. You sleep during the day, and that's not really, your whole cycle gets messed up. This is spiritual science that's been proven for thousands upon thousands of years. That, it's better to connect to God when you're physically not as well. Like if you're sick or under stress, or you're having some kind of issues, it's easier to connect to God. When things are going well and you're happy and your life, your physical life is going well, your material life is going well, it's harder to connect to God. But when the sun is withdrawn, when you're attuned to death, people have spiritual experiences when they're on their deathbed or they're sick, and their body isn't dominating their existence. When you fast, things like this, you have better meditations, better spiritual experiences. And so in the Sajmark system, Babaji found the best time to meditate was right before dawn. And so that's why he wrote the book Reality at Dawn. Because when there is dawn and dusk, there is a balance in the universe. That's why you have spiritual experiences when you see a sunset or sunrise. People like to see sunsets and sunrises. And when you're out at that time, you feel it's a balance in nature, right? Light and dark are coming together. And gray is the color of the central region, where the highest level that a human can achieve on a spiritual journey. The gray of dawn, where light and darkness meet. And that's a balancing moment. I told my brother about Sajmark when we were fishing on a lake during sunset. And I had a profound spiritual experience when I was telling him. He started, and he didn't like it at first, but he stuck with it, and he's been a lifer, volunteered at the ashram and, all these other things. And he was staying, he was in an apartment building on a lake in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, which is kind of like upstate New York. It's right on the border. And beautiful place. And, kind of a interesting place out there. A lot of famous writers were there and things like that. And we were fishing, and, Peter and Paul, my brother's son, my nephew, sort of my, one of my favorite relatives in terms of just like somebody who's always had really good energy, like somebody who's always been thoughtful. And, he was different than my brother and his two other boys. My brother had 3 sons. He's the more introverted person. But anyways, I, told him about this thing, and there was just this profound feeling, like a strong feeling. And people get that at sunset and sunrise. There's a movie with Nicolas Cage and Meg Ryan, and Nicolas Cage played an angel who fell in love with human Meg Ryan and had a spiritual fall. And there was a former angel in the, in the hospital. And the angel said, "You guys, we still go out. I still go out there at sunset, and there's a western sunset at the ocean, and there'll be all these angels staring at the sun. People couldn't see them, but they'd just be staring at the sun when it was sunset, right? But again, it's just a good balancing time. So there's the reason why people are supposed to meditate before dawn, especially in India where it's so hot. It's the only time your body would cool down. People have air conditioning now, of course, but it was just like Babaji did, back when in his day. But, there's reasons for meditating before dawn. And if not, you meditate first thing in the morning. But the other thing he said is that there's good times to meditate when the sun's at its highest point. Like that's a good time to meditate, which is going to be a part of this story. And then between 2 and 4, for some reason, like it's a good time. And I always had these wonderful experiences between 2 and 4, better meditations. And I was born at 2 o'clock in the morning, so I thought it was because of that, but whatever. I've been feeling pretty good, like really good, posting the video about, what I'm calling the big parasite, this, conflict thing that went on. And even though the person's raging against me, which I'm mostly unaware of, somebody who was a fan before is now, somebody who's a hater, right? And spewing hate about me. It's been such a relief, and on levels I didn't understand. And like, there are these times where I don't want to do something. I just don't feel like I want to do it. And for whatever reason, I don't feel like, in terms of being self-interested or whatever it is, but it keeps on nagging at me. And, I know that my soul, God, are wanting me to do something. And, it happened when I first was going to make celebrity videos. Or I wasn't going to make them. I looked at, I talked about this in another video, when I realized I was going to have to make celebrity videos and more, videos about the beast. And I was only making one every month or so, one every whatever it was. Like, I really wasn't making them. It was an anomaly on my channel, but I just knew to make this into a job and to bring people to the channel, I had to dive into what they're interested in. Like, it was a clear vision, and God was guiding me to do this. And I didn't want to do it, but it's paid dividends, and I've been able to deal with it and even enjoy it to whatever extent. But it helped the channel grow, and, it was something I had to do. But there are things I have to do that I don't want to do. But whenever I do them, it's great. Like, there's immediate benefit and hidden benefits I didn't know about. And so I woke up last night, and I was like, I fell asleep for a couple hours. I'd slept late. And I started to meditate. I felt pretty good. And then the idea came to me that I should do more cord cutting with this person. Because, I wrote and said all the connections are severed between us. And he wrote a bunch of, ranty, hostile, whatever it was. And I said, the cord is cut between us. Because, there's a parasitic thing going on. But I thought I would actually do the cord cutting. You could use a knife and just, do it in a, or whatever it is. But in Sajmar, we do things with our minds in a meditative state. And so I had the idea I was cutting all the cords between us. And I already had felt an energy boost. And I felt amazing. Like, it was a profound experience. Just great. Like, in the meditation, immediately there was I had a positive, feeling from it. Like, just a gush of, energy and just, God's love, whatever it was. Like, it was the right thing to do. And, I didn't think there was anything residual there. But then I thought, well, since I really didn't feel like I had a relationship with this person, the person watched my videos and talked about me, but I never thought about him and, the people over there, unless they came in, I saw one of their bear names in the, in the comment section. And so to me, there was no relationship. Like, he would write to me, he wanted to, whatever. He wanted to have a relationship, but I, wasn't interested. Right. And, I mean, for a variety of reasons, which I've covered in other videos. But when I did the cord cutting, I was like, wow, this is profound, and I felt really good yesterday as well. Leading into this, I had a really good day. And so then I thought, well, there must be other people. People lack prana, which is the creative force, the life force. It's also God's love, like pranic energy. And it is the most subtle force, and people need it to exist. And people have, bare minimums amount of prana. Like, our system sucks prana. parents drain their prana from their kids because they're depleted. And life in general, the materialistic life and the lack of a family, the lack of proper, even physical nutrition, the degradation of our food and all the things drain people of their prana. Multiple, romantic sexual partners and, relationships that are all draining, and, just failed attempts at people that you really shouldn't be with. You don't really have any chance of marrying them. They're not your significant other, and just all these interactions that people have. All of this stuff drains them, right? Porn addiction, all these kind of things. And so most people are just, this is why I talk about ghouls and zombies and spiritual vampires. Most people are down on their prana. And through the material world, you can gain prana through, material possessions. Like, one of the love languages, like gifts and, physical, whatever it is, monetary, whatever. But it's a low level of prana. Like if you buy a new thing, you feel excited about it. And people who are shopaholics, like that's how they get like little bits of prana. But it's very low dose, and like it's, it's also wrapped in all the materialistic things and the burden of material, whatever. And most people are in horizontal relationships. Prana you get from God, really, is the only pure source. And there's an infinite amount of prana because God's love is everywhere. But people have cut themselves off from that and don't know how to access it. So they try to extract it from their married partner, their relationships, friends and family. And those people are also sucking prana because they're depleted. So, you have all these people sucking the energy out of each other. So very few people have any love energy to give. Most people are depleted. And so when they find a source of prana, like they might not do this consciously, but they're kind of aware of it, they find ways of latching onto you. And there are people who are prana suckers, like lots of them. There's the desperate, people who are just, they're desperate. You feel this when you're interacting with most people. You feel a drain of energy because people are, sucking energy from you. But then there are people who are just good at it, like they've learned to do it in various ways, and I guess I'll come back to that. But so I had this thought to cut cords with anybody out there because I would have never thought I would have to do it with this person, and so I was like, well, there must be other people that I don't even know, that they've never commented. I'm not even aware they're watching my videos, but they're sucking energy from me. Because all these desperate people. And I did that, and I found, wow, what an amazing boost, like immediate results. Like I feel it this morning, that there was people sucking energy from me that have latched onto me through the internet. And this is important because, lots of people are probably suffering from this. And so then I thought, well, I better, block this from happening because, you can do all these things at a spiritual level. Block people from reconnecting to you and things. And I'm going to have to go through this like you would, go and do a virus scan on your computer every once in a while kind of thing. Because it's obviously been having an effect on me, like a negative one. And that there are all these desperate people, and, I have this, love energy from doing the Sajmark system, and, the Gratefullness meditation that we do, because the transmission is pranahuti, which is, God's love. And people who do it can get their love banks filled. But sadly, people won't even make that effort, right? People who are hearing about this from me, and they are attracted to my channel and me because of the energy, and they're sucking energy. And they won't do the extra step of doing the cleaning and the transmission that's given freely in the Sajmark system to fill them up with this stuff, right? You can have infinite amount of prana, and everybody needs it. Like I've said before, you can survive so many days without eating, maybe 40 days or something, 30 days, I don't know. You can survive so many days without drinking water, 3-4 days. Whatever it is, maybe some, whatever, I don't know, 6, 7, I don't know. Like, you start breaking down, get dehydrated, it's brutal, but you can only survive minutes less than, an hour without breathing, and you can't survive a millisecond without love. Like love is, there in your system. And once you don't have love, it's, like it's over. Even for like demons and, people who are worshiping the dark forces, they need prana. They repackage it in various ways, like, and people learn to suck energy. But, the internet now is, it must a vehicle for people to suck energy from other people. So that's something I'm aware of, and I'm grateful for that, to have this experience. This thing has made dividends for me on multiple levels. There are various types of people that do this, and ways of sucking energy. Some people suck energy in like anger form. Like this is their primary way. The big parasite is somebody who obviously does this. And what they do is they provoke a person into getting angry, right? Or other people. Like, your audience, his audience, for example. Like, this, you do something to trigger people. You push their buttons, or you say things to get people riled up and angry. Like Trump would do this at a rally. And there's a lot of emotion and energy in anger. People are like, well, comedians are angry or, making excuses, but putting anger out there, especially at this volatile time, and people are, not good decision makers, is a bad thing. Like, you can't be doing that. You can't be, getting people to feed off of anger. It's like and feed off of the crowd's anger, right? You know how like people get all riled up and turn to a mob, and there's people who, get off on that. And, people who provoke other people and get them to, into an emotional state and then feed off of that state, right? Like they, and there's like energetic beings out there, what people consider demons, that feed off of stuff like this. And so there's a great episode of Star Trek, the original series, where this energetic, malevolent entity comes on board the Enterprise when they're in conflict with, like, I think the Klingons, and brings a bunch of Klingons over the Enterprise and turns their phasers into swords. And they're fighting each other on the Enterprise, and every time they're killed, they're brought back to life. Like the energetic thing heals them, and it feeds off the anger and the hostility and the war that's going on at the Enterprise, and they get rid of it by laughing at it. Like people have, someone made a kind of a funny little video where they put New World Order, they superimposed it on the energetic, thing wherever it was, right? But there's ways of understanding that people drain energy from you. My ex used to do this. In the early part of our relationship, I was so stressed out and not on board with the relationship. She was 6 years older than me. I felt the relationship was kind of forced. I felt it was like something God wanted me to do, but I wasn't on board. And she did things in a subtle way that kind of freaked me out or whatever. Like I was already kind of triggered. So I thought I was the person being the kind of, the negative person to the relationship, right? Like she was trying hard and I was trying to push her away. But like as I see it now, it was because of this, this energetic, she's trying to suck my energy. Like I consider her a succubus, right? And so, like I put a lot of it on myself that I was the negative person in the relationship. Like on paper, it would seem that way. But as the relationship moved on, I had this experience that, I was doing research on MK Ultra, and I was listening to these people who said that they had been MK Ultra, mind control victims, and many of them had been, abused, they were abused by their family or something like this, or, somebody. And as I heard these people talk and the symptoms and the after effects, it was everything I saw was going on with my ex. And I sat her down, watched the show with her, parts of it, because she was completely triggered. When she got triggered, she sometimes would just have a psychotic break. And go into some, like, sometimes age regress. Like, there were times that she turned into like a little girl and things like this, just started to, like, flip out, have some psychological breakdown. So I had to be, careful what I showed her that might be triggering. But, we stopped the thing, and she said, yeah, she agreed that this was what kind of happened to her, whether it was she was a part of somebody doing this intentionally or it's just, how it worked out. But she was, like, suffering from the same kind of condition. And then she said, if I confront this, I'll be schizophrenic and I'll be locked in a psych ward and I won't ever come back. Which was like a moment of truth, like, reality of the situation I was in for me and the kind of person she was, right? And I was like, fuck, right? Like, because I was thinking about how it was affecting the kids and me and all this stuff. That this person was always going to be broken. And I looked at my options and I was like, well, I can't leave the kids alone with this, right? I can't just, ditch this because obviously, I'm bearing the burden of this thing. Like, we were having, these arguments and things that would escalate into her just flipping out. And, where I would have to go hide all the knives. She would get self-abusive. Like, she would, like, just get freaked out and start slapping herself and, like, punching herself in the thighs and saying, this is what your words are doing to me. Like, when we were, having a fight or whatever. Like, it's just a freaking nightmare. That's why I don't deal with drama and these, things with people. I've done my time. Somebody's always threatened suicide and, someone who's so fragile, you can't express something that needs to be expressed without them flipping out. Like, just normal, like, interactions where you say something that's, critical because, like, it's there to be said. And so I thought about my options and I realized the only thing I could do is, like, resist the arguments. Like, I come up with, like, treatment plans on how we could avoid and de-escalate the arguments because I was good at stuff like that. I'm a good problem solver and I had experience in the world of, psychological world and, through these treatment centers and treatment programs and the abuse cycle and things. When you discharged a client, this treatment center I work with, these were, adolescent sex offenders. Many of them had been abused, and they had to, go through this workbook. They had to have a relapse prevention program, and it was predicated on this idea of an abuse cycle. And you could also have a victim cycle because it's the same thing, an abuse cycle and a victim cycle, because people go through victim things as well. And you can see the stages of the cycle. You can see the various, I've applied this to other things. It can be used because people get into these cyclical behaviors in relationships and whatever. And to leave the treatment, the kids had to have, like, exit points on the cycle in their relapse prevention program. And they had to have strategies of recognizing their cycle and then how would they leave the cycle. And more often than not, all the time it involved talking to somebody and saying out loud you were in your cycle, like a person who's an alcoholic. When they're getting triggered, they're supposed to reach out to their sponsor, and you have to have ways of doing that. And, like, so I figured ways that we could de-escalate our conflict, and my ex just wouldn't do any of them, which is like a real, telltale sign. So I'm, sitting there for like 3 days trying to figure out what to do, really just bummed and overwhelmed by the situation, that this broken person's never going to get better. And so how do I cope with it and, deal with it in the family situation? So the only thing that I could do was be loving all the time, which wasn't my nature, right? Like, I can be very loving and affectionate, but, it's not my default position. And when people come at me, my response is to go back at that, right? And so even when she was trying to, provoke me, I would just stay positive and, say positive things. And I knew that it was, I'd seen people who were, there's a method of counseling called, unconditional positive regard, where that the counselor just gives the client unconditional positive regard. I forget the name of that way of doing it. My ex said that, she wanted more love, like most, women will say that, right? But he became really loving, like just, in the face of all this. And it was very, that was when our relationship ended, because it was clear my ex didn't want that. Like, she said at times that my love got her through the day. And she was going through all kinds of physical stuff. She had the thyroid issue and all these, she was bit by a brown recluse spider, and then she had adrenal fatigue collapse, and just, constant, she had always a constant stream of, physical issues. And I had always been more of a critical person and, negative and whatever. But I just resisted my, my tendencies, through, self-discipline. And I just wouldn't, pick up the rope when she was trying to, like, provoke me. Like, I realized that she was always would get triggered. She'd have some kind of thing that psychologically destabilized her. And then she would try to provoke a fight with me. Like, then it became obvious, the dynamics. Like, I would have thought it was more me than her in the beginning. But then I realized she was provoking me. Like, she was wanting me to, engage with her, and I just wouldn't. Like, we became, resistant to it. And the more I did this, the more desperately she would try to say things, like mean things, to get me, triggered in some way. And, and it was very similar to this other person who, who says horrible things, but forgets those things and, excuses those things, thinks they have the right to do that, but doesn't, accept that other people are going to respond, right? Which is just this, vampirish, weak, just a pathological nightmare of a person. Like, people who don't, think that they can say anything to anybody else, but feel like they're somehow a victim when people respond, right? Like, they provoke other people by everything that they, exude out into the universe. Like, they're asking for drama and anger and conflict. And then, and there's, like, energetic beings that latch onto some people, like demonic beings that latch onto people, and, people who are always provoking people. This is, the case with the, the big, the big parasite. These beings feed off anger. There's, etheric beings, loving beings, angels, but there's, negative ones, and they feed off the anger created by, like, Alex Jones is another example of this, when he goes on his demonic rants. And what you'll see is, when someone gets abused, this was a big part of my workbook that, so I talked about this extensively because I was, in it. Like, I was working in a treatment center and I was living it with my ex, and, we had all this, I had all this experience with this stuff, right? But what I found out from, many of the kids who were clients, and then what I saw with my ex, that when they entered into this, this condition, it was like their face would morph. It was like their face would turn into another person. When they were triggered, you can see this again, Alex Jones, I'm sure, with this big, like the big parasite, you'll see this, where there's, they morph into something else. They turn, like, their face turns, and it's like contorts in some way, and it's like you feel differently about the person. It's like the person that you're usually with is gone, and there's some other entity, like, alternate personality. And, when someone gets injected with this, like, abuse program, and everyone gets a little bit of it, they have this, when it runs in them, right? Because people can either become a perpetual victim, become an abuser, or cope in some way and get rid of this energy, and this like virus is now inside them, this spiritual virus, this venom. But you'll see, like, something will come over them. And all these, kids, many of you have suffered abuse, know what I'm talking about. Like, the abuser would, like, transform into something like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Oftentimes they could be nice or charming, and they'd find ways to bring people in, but then they'd show you this other side, and it, like, was freaky, like, it was weird. And I experienced this a lot with my ex. So, it's something that people should be aware of, like this, these programs, these parasitic programs, these demonic things that are inside people, and, that feed off of negative energy. and abuse and anger and fear and all these things. And they provoke it everywhere they go. And they create chaos wherever they go. Maybe you have a person at work like this, or somebody in your life, but when you experience it. And there are always things with it, right? There's certain demographics of people, and I think you guys know which ones I'm talking about. They've become, protected group, and they have the lowest life expectancy. These dramatic people who, are unaccepting of their situation, and they have the lowest life expectancy. They have the highest levels of drug addiction, and they have high suicide rates, and they can't sustain relationships. They can't sustain employment. They're drug addicts, right? They have all these things, and there's just all this negative energy around them because, this is part of that condition, right? And now it's become something where you can't say anything about these groups of people. So, it's being protected even. The people who are demonic in nature are now making rules to protect their demonization. And so what happened was that I became aware when my ex left, me and my family, there was an immediate sort of energy boost. And after a week, I was relieved that she was gone, even though I had to deal with all this stress. And I was aware that she wanted to do this cord cutting with me and Anna, because in her mind, we were sucking her energy, and I was kind of effed up that she wanted to cut her cord with her daughter, and so, I was aware of it, but I was busy with other things. And I had assumed that she did it, and I, whatever, but I wasn't really thinking about it because, our relationship was over. It just hadn't played itself out yet. And I was alone in India with the kids, and when she left, I was, we were with, in India, we had a visa crisis where we overstayed our visa, and there's a whole explanation, which I've talked about in the Journey series. But it sucked. And we had to go through this whole thing with the epic bureaucracy that is the Indian government that you can't even imagine what that's like. And that was a whole hassle, and it, kind of was frowned upon in the mission. It brought negative attention to the mission, and, there's people renting and doing things illegal all over the place in the, organization. And so it threatened all that kind of thing because there's so many weird laws. You're not supposed to rent to foreigners, rent a flat to foreigners after they had a big event of their own, a big tea event that happened in a mall, and it involved cell phones and foreigners. There was a guy who was an ex-CIA agent that ran the thing. So, it's, one of those things, right? These big sort of false flaggy type of things. Or, a terrorist thing, right? So they changed all these rules because of that. And people weren't obeying the laws, which they just don't do there. They have a lot of laws that just don't get obeyed. And, and a lot of laws that are just stupid. But anyways, we went through the whole thing with that. And then we had to go get our visas renewed, and we went to Sri Lanka, and my ex informed me she was out of thyroid medication. And I was always having to monitor her for signs that either her thyroid was off or she was suffering adrenal fatigue. And both of those conditions were her slurring her speech and her freaking out emotionally. So you couldn't distinguish between them. But I was supposed to watch them. And if I pointed out, she would say something like, you're just saying that because, it was this whole thing, right? Because she would get shitty when those things happen. And if I pointed out, it was why you, it was I was complaining, even though she had asked me to monitor this thing because it was life-threatening. And she had been on this thyroid medication for 30 years or some crazy stuff like that, 20-some years. And, she was on a very high dose of it. And even with that was, very volatile. And she was supposed to have 500 pills. She was taking 2 a day to last the duration of the trip because we didn't know if we could get the thyroid medication. It was Armour thyroid. They have other kinds. Armour is, dissected thyroid, like a animal thyroid, which is, different than like the pills that, that most people take. And so it's hard to come by, especially in a foreign country. And we were in a crisis heading back to India, and my daughter was, was wanting to get on Facebook, and we were against social media for her. And, she was like, using suicide, a threat of suicide as a way to manipulate and get the thing. It was just one of these things, which is a nightmare. And I was just diving into the YouTube channel, and this is when I realized I had to make celebrity videos just to, prop this, channel up financially and bring people in to deliver a spiritual message. Like I had to dive into the beast. So all these things were happening at the same time. And my ex just decided to leave and go off her thyroid medication altogether, which was a disaster because, she like almost died. Like, she went through a whole physical crisis and it didn't work. Like she was trying to reboot her thyroid using red light, infrared light, and changing her diet. And she said, well, people have done it. And I'm like, well, it sounds kind of one of these new agey kind of BS things that people say that it's done, but it doesn't really work, right? I'm not an allopathic medicine person. I don't like the system, but, once you've been on a medication for years and your thyroid stops working because it doesn't need to, that's the problem. Like it happens with men who take testosterone. They take testosterone and their body stops producing it because it's there, and then they go off it, and then they have less. Like once you do that, you're going to do it for the rest of your life because your body's going to shut that function down, and that's what happened with my ex and her thyroid, right? So she went back to America. So long story short, and then there was this cord cutting which I was aware of, and so some months went by, and my kids and I had to go back to India because we only had a 1-month visa back to Sri Lanka. It was a whole chaotic time. I was trying to get settled, and it was just anyway. And so I one day I was like in a grocery store, and we would walk to these grocery stores, and they would have stores that were just produce. And I went to the produce store. I walked there, and I just felt this sense of panic, right? Like it was a weird thing. And I looked up, and there was this Indian cop, and he was staring at me, smiling in a weird way. Like it kind of creeped me out, but it was like I was having a panic attack, right in my gut, like this feeling in my gut. And I, like it was, and I was sort of like almost like a dizzy or whatever. And so I started walking back to the place we were staying, the flat or whatever it was. And I put the groceries away, but I was like in a panic state, and it was like noon, when the sun was at its highest point. And I just, the feeling wouldn't leave. And, and I realized that she had just cut the cord. Like that's like, it came to me that happened. And later on, like the dates were confirmed, when she, I figured out that this was actually, this is when she did it. But I knew anyway. And so I walked over to the ashram to meditate. And I, I saw this like almost like a, visually like some sort of dark, like serpent-like parasitic type of entity like in my belly. And I grabbed it and I threw it out. Like some sort of connection was there. And I felt immediate relief. It was a profound spiritual experience. And, I don't like necessarily have those things like this. But it was very, it was there. And I was like immediate boost in my energy. My ex was like thinking I was draining energy off of her. Like that was her reason for cutting the cord. But because of her choice on the thyroid medication and disconnecting, like her health spiraled. She was paralyzed for a while. Like all these things happened, to the extent that just, 3 or 4 years ago, after I had remarried, my son went for a visit there, and he was talking about the things he did, and he had pictures on his phone, and I didn't want to look at him. Like I just wanted to disconnect, immediately. And I saw her, and like I would not recognize her. She was always older than me. Like she was 6 years older than me, but she was someone who had gray hair when she was in her 20s. Her hair started to turn gray. And she aged more rapidly And my family has longevity. Like all my grandparents lived into their 90s. One of my grandmother almost, she lived to 99. My parents both lived into their 90s, and people always look at us saying that we look younger than we are. All my siblings, we have longevity in our family. So I looked much younger than her. So like looked like there was a bigger gap. She just looked older, and she aged more rapidly, and she lost all her teeth, and this has happened recently. She had some issues, dental issues before that, but she's now has dentures, and her hair is completely white, and I wouldn't be able to recognize her. But this even happened before that because, there was a time after she left, this is after the cord cutting thing, that we were going to talk about the kids, and we were going to FaceTime, like just to come up with she was gone for months. And then she'd show back up and connect with the kids, or try to talk to me and find out what's going on. Like we were the ones who were not connecting with her, and then she would disappear again. And she didn't want to be seen. I don't know why we were doing a video call, but whatever it was. And I saw her face for a moment, and she looked like a different person. I go, is that even you? And she wouldn't show herself, right? And it was this weird thing. And so she sent me a picture. I said, what do you look like now? So she goes, well, my face has changed. And I'm like, what? She goes, well, my face has changed. And, I wish I could show you the thing. It was just, but it was such a profound difference. She said she took 100 pictures, tried to get the best. This was the best one. She had someone, take these pictures of her. And her face was different. I wouldn't have recognized her if I saw her. Her face was literally changed. Its shape had changed. It was, not just bloating or something, but and it wasn't a positive change. She looked like some sort of, meth addict, witch. Just weird. I'm like, whose face? It was a whole weird thing, right? And so this all happened, and now where she can't even, she doesn't contribute. She roped in another guy, and he does everything, and she's just hanging in there, barely, partly because of her thyroid choice, but also, cutting the cord, and I was providing all this energy, which it became clear to me. I flourished. My energy level spiked immediately after I realized she cut the cord. And that was not it wasn't psychological. I felt better, and I was like, oh man, this is the best thing's happened to me. I was psyched. The figure I put on it at the time was 60% of my energy. There was a post when she left, a 10% boost to my energy, and then a 50%, when she first left, and 50 after the cord cutting. And then I knew it was a real thing. I knew it worked. It worked in reverse, but it, benefited me. We have an energetic life. We have a life of a soul, and everything that exists, even rocks, are based in energy. There's just like in a computer, what you see is the illusion, and what it really is computer code that manifests what we're seeing. When you see an image of a person, it's not that person. It's a reproduction, a digital reproduction that's based in computer code. You can look at what an image looks like in terms of the, the computer code and language that is representing this video. This video, for example, it's not my voice. It's a reproduction of my voice. It is all of it, the images, whatever it might be. And people are woefully aware of their energetic side, and your energy's being, used and, and oftentimes drained from you in various circumstances, right? So when you're around people who are angry and hateful, that's why I don't understand the viewers of this person, the fans of this person, because I immediately felt like it had a negative effect on my condition, right? In Sahajmark's system, there's two things. There's spiritual approach and there's spiritual condition. And most people have no spiritual approach. They haven't started their spiritual journey yet. And so they're at, ground zero for their, they're at zero. They're at their initial point, spiritual approach-wise. And most people have a very gross spiritual condition, heavy spiritual condition. Samskaras, impressions, like we talked about that before. Samskaras are, like addictions and like, but they're also like, being married, right? Like everybody has marriage samskaras, right? Like my preceptor, the guy who started me doing Saj Marg, he went to Babaji and showed him all these pictures of women he was dating. And Babaji was like, not a fan, right? Like he wanted to see if these women would be good prospective spouses. He'd go to India and show pictures, like, I'm dating this woman, what do you think? And Babaji wouldn't say anything, but almost always after he returned, the relationship fell apart. Like it just happened naturally. And one time he showed a picture of this woman, and Babaji just ripped her to shreds. And Babaji never was like that. Like he was always gentle and, like not, but he just said the worst things about this person. And this guy, Fred, was like, that's like, he was stunned that Babaji did that. And he didn't see any of the things that Babaji said. And they returned to America, and everything that Babaji said, Fred ended up seeing that this woman, like she was a disaster. And after he showed her the pictures, Babaji said, I can clean your wedding samskaras, your marriage samskaras. And Fred said, no. And I'm like, listen to this thing. I'm like, Fred, he wasn't going to clean, you were still going to get married. He was going to clean the bad stuff. And Fred goes, yeah, I know that now. But Fred said no. And then he had a marriage that lasted 8 hours. And, the woman was back sleeping with a married man that she was in an affair with. So, so that was a disaster. Then he married a woman who, was, I don't think was great. And he had issues, but that's because he had bad, marriage samskaras, like bad, relationship samskaras. But, but you need to have some of them or you won't get married, right? You have to have kid samskaras or you won't have kids, right? Some of these things are, things that are just part of your life that you come in with. And when they're all done, your samskaras are all cleaned, you just leave. Like someone who doesn't have any samskaras isn't bound to planet Earth and their soul just leaves. And, I explained this extensively in other videos, but there's energetic connections between people and you feel people's energy and they feel yours. And people are, like I said, woefully unaware of this, but it's a big part of everything. And someone might convince you or con you into, most people would think my ex is like a better person, a nicer person, more approachable, right? It's a better personality, like you see this with people. But it doesn't matter how a person presents. Like people can convince you they're better than they are. Good con men, energetic thieves, vampires have a way to lure you in. They might have charisma. It's called presenting, right? When you're doing psychological evaluation, you're like, this is how this person presents. But then there's, hidden things they're hiding, right? People have a way of, smiling and being happy. And, like when people go on a first date, they're going to behave in a way that is not accurate to their to their actual condition on a daily basis, right? Like people marry one person, date one person and marry another, right? Like, it's the same person, but the person you date ends up not being the person you marry. And people are, hiding their stuff. They don't want you to see their negative stuff. And people who are, demonic and negative, they are oftentimes they seem like the most likable, charismatic people, narcissists and whatever it is. And, and that's why people will defend. They have this distorted image of somebody and they defend them, even when the person's displaying all the things that they're displaying. You can see this with the fans of this, this guy who's going on these, demonic rants, right? But anyways, I personally have learned about this now. Having gone through that experience. And so all this then has paid dividends. Like it was something I didn't want to do, but I realized how much I've been drained through my connection with people who I don't feel any connection to because there's people watching my videos who are, energy suckers. Babaji called them blood suckers. Like when he was, he'd give this divine transmission, the pranahuti, but there are times when people were meditating when he wasn't prepared to give it and they would just be sucking his energy. Like they would sit next to him or sit in a circle and start meditating. And Babaji referred to these people as bloodsuckers. And they'd be drawing his energy, and he wasn't ready to give it. And so this is how people are. And we live in desperate times with desperate people who are low on prana. And even when you offer something like Saj Marg to them, where they could get this prana, oftentimes they can't extract it in its purest form. Like they can't digest it on a spiritual level because they're so twisted and warped and broken that they can't absorb the prana if it's given in a, pure form. They can't respond to pure love. Like they have to have, if you love such people, this is what happened with my ex when I became loving, I focused on that. When you give them love, they flip out. Like there's lots of women out there who say they want to be loved. Like that's their main thing. They want a man to love them. But when they get a guy like that, they immediately reject him, or they try to turn it into drama or stuff because they've become twisted. They say they want love, but they extract their energy through drama and manipulation and other things, right? Especially these succubuses. So, there's just this element out there. But now I'm like aware of it, and I'm like, oh, okay, I can, adjust what I'm doing, and just every once in a while, just do this, etheric cord cutting, and just put up these like protective, things to prevent people from lashing onto me. Which is, it's a sad state of affairs. And it's why I've hesitated to move forward with gatherings and things like that in the gratefulness meditation because, it's just, there's just so much you can do for people. People are so desperate and they're so, energetically, deprived that they, want to latch on to anybody. And, and I've seen it already in terms of the way people relate to me and their comments, and they just want to dump stuff on people, and they want to, it's like you have drowning people, and you got to keep yourself above water, and all these people are drowning around you, trying to drag you down because they're energetically drained. This is the world we live in. Well, anyways, so that's that's it. There it is. Okay, I worked a little bit on my journey series, and I went and had a walk with my dogs, and beautiful day outside today. I did the first part of this video. I have to edit that, and then it's not going to have as much stories today as voiceover. But, this whole thing, I had one more comment to get to here. Somebody wrote me this comment this morning. Their comments have drifted. The one big video is still getting views, but very few comments. Like the drama is, is very little. Like I was surprised at how little there was. And it said here, it's true that the big parasite gained legitimacy with me when he mentioned your name because I was already a longtime subscriber of yours. I also think there was a bizarre flirtatious vibe between Big Parasite and Dr. Shiva during the interview, and Christy was Dr. Shiva's catcher, weird stuff. There's that. But this idea of credibility I talked about in the video, there are people who, when they name drop, people who are fans of mine and trusted me would also resonate with somebody else. Not just me, anybody. Like if you trust somebody and they're fans of someone you're fans of, there is a level of, just by osmosis, the person says, all right, I can trust this person too, right? And that's what the big parasite has done, as a behavior, not just with me, with other people. That's how he wins people over to his audience by saying, this is all parasitic behavior. I got another comment last night. It was kind of a great one. I didn't understand the comment, so I banned the person. And, I knew it was like a hostile one. I just didn't understand it at first because I didn't remember what he was talking about. That happens all the time when people are talking about something like they're in a conversation with you and you just said something. Like, so he was at the part of the video where I was talking about my supplements, and I had forgot all about that. So I didn't even know he was talking about health. Then I realized he was talking about me saying needing supplements after I had already moved on. But what he said was, it sounds like you need prayers for your health. Where's your God now? Right? But that's a very immature way of looking God. Like God is a giver of gifts and health and all these things. Like you're going to die. You're going to get sick. You're going to have miseries and difficulties. And saints and higher developed spiritual beings, higher developed souls, they have more stuff. They can handle more stuff and they need more stuff. It's part of their, more difficulties. Miseries is divine blessings. And that's how it's viewed on the Sajmark system. The meditation and connecting to God isn't going to alleviate all your problems, but it'll help you cope. It'll help you get through them and guide you through them. And, this is, all of that, right? Just immature, stuff. Like most of the big parasite people that come here, the people with bears in their names, have been respectful. Some of them have been good about sharing things with me, links and stuff. And I didn't have a problem with them. That was one of the reasons that, I let this thing go on. And I didn't know the scope of it, like how much he was plagiarizing me, how much this was part of a pattern, how negative. He's just so low vibrational. And he's spiraling. And I guess there's another guy wrote a comment saying he taped the big parasite and, he exposed him because the guy, he tried to, as he said in the comment, you can find the comment somewhere. There was a string of them, and he said he exposed him for trying to extort him and, all these things. And a bunch of people left after that. And the whole thing with this guy, JB, whatever his name was, that he confronted him and won at some debate, like people were saying. And since then, he's been spiraling. But these are all the behaviors of a person who's not a truthful person, right? I told him the truth, and you guys know it. Like even his most diehard followers, you got to see that there's hate and low vibrations. There's excuses for it. Well, he's a comedian, or this is just his comedy. Come on. You feel the energy. He's saying things that are horrible. It's not funny when you're, demonizing people and doing these things in a way with all this, there's an energy that he's producing. It's low vibration. And he's, he can't take any sort of criticism. And people who have challenged him within this organization, he's gone after them and their families and things, which people are saying in the comments. Like, I had no idea about all this stuff. And that's cult behavior. Like, you're in a cult, right? And it's not my job to wake people up. And, some of those people came here. And you have a choice to make. And, whatever, it's not my problem. And I said that, that's how I felt about it all along. But I have received a lot of benefit, like just relief on my part, because this was a non-existing relationship that was weighing me down, and I had no idea. So I'm grateful that I was guided to do this. I'm grateful that it's been, there's been a clean break. I just looked at my subscribers in the last 3 days. I've lost like 214 subscribers, which is, some of that could be just YouTube purging, like they do that, so. But whatever, like it's nominal. Even if it was 10,000 or, all of them, I'd still be feeling better than I do now. Like just because of his, again, this was a non-existing relationship that was somehow weighing on me. And he was taking this information that's not, his to take. It's not even, a lot of it comes from the Sajmark teachings and my relationship with divinity. It's not even, mine in that sense, right? And he was using it for something that is not a good thing, to exploit his audience and all this stuff. And, it's fairly obvious. And so many people see this. So many people who used to be part of his thing see it. And he's in such, he treats anybody who brings this up with having tantrums and attacking people. And people are scared of his reaction, scared of his anger. And so they're grateful for me for doing this because they can't do it themselves. But they all, they all went through this or know it. And even his members now are concerned about it because he's just going on more and more rants. He's just going after people, and they'll just be a negative, hateful channel. I think that's what it is already. And it's just going to go, cycle down the drain because he's not connected to something higher than himself, and whatever. It's not my concern. But what is my concern, or what is my relief at this point, is that I just feel a lot better cutting myself free from him. And if I feel that much better, then what about all the people that are just listening to him every day? Like just like the effects on him. And who knows what those people's internal condition, spiritual condition is. It's probably not great. So, so there it is. And I would have never imagined this outcome. I would have never imagined how much this was like draining me or how much it was negative in some way. And then all the rest of it. Like it's, you know, it's been a real blessing. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.